Kiss Army. I'm Pasquale Vari, and welcome to Let Me Know, a Short Kiss. Claudio is still on vacation, so in this episode, once again, we'll be joined by Michael Bornasian. Michael, this is becoming a habit. Thank you so much once again for stepping in.
But it's good. I enjoy talking to you and you guys. I said that last time, and yeah, and a good subject to talk about today.
Absolutely. I mean, can you believe it? It's been 35 years since the release of Hot in the Shade. Specifically, it was released on October 17th, 1989. So we're a
Mm.
little early with the anniversary, but with the release of the Hot in the Shade merch on Kiss Online, let's talk about it now. So my first question to you, Mike, what were your initial thoughts when you first heard Hot in the Shade?
So I first heard Hot in the Shade in '93. I became a fanatical Kiss fan in '93. Bought all the albums pretty much in chronological order. Before then, I had heard the singles and the videos. So Rise to It, Hide Your Heart, Forever, and I enjoyed those songs. I thought they were quite good. But I didn't hear the full album until '93. So like I said, I tried my best when I became a fanatical Kiss fan to listen to the albums in chronological order. So hearing Hot in the Shade for the first time, it was I had already heard everything that else that they had done in the 80s, and my initial impression, I remember when I first listened to the album, was okay, this sounds like their most rock and roll album in a long time. Because if you consider what the band did in the 80s, I mean, they started out with Unmasked doing pop and disco. They went into The Elder, which was, progressive sounding, dare I say. Then they went into heavy metal. Then they went into glam metal. Then they went into hair metal. And then they ended the decade with Hot in the Shade, which for me was like they were trying to get back to the basics. You know,
Mhm.
it was also interesting to me after, hearing, the mid 80s albums, which Paul dominated very much in terms of the songwriting and the better songs, and Gene's songwriting dipped a little bit. I found that Hot in the Shade found Gene starting to make a comeback in terms of his songwriting. Not complete comeback, but starting to make a comeback in terms of his songwriting. So that was a good sign. Another thing I noticed, and I listened to the album again, a few days ago when you asked me to do this episode, and again I was struck also by the fact that this is their bluesiest album.
Mhm.
There's a lot of songs on here. I'd say maybe easily about half the songs have some kind of a blues element to it, either in terms of the structure of the song, or in terms of the riffing, or in terms of Bruce or Paul using a slide on the guitar. I mean, it was obvious that around that time people were starting to, or the industry was starting to pay more attention and give some respect to the blues and how it had influenced rock, you know overall. So I think Kiss kind of digested this to a certain amount on this album. And that I think also contributes to it being a very, rock and roll sounding album. Not even hard rock, a very rock and roll sounding album. And honestly, the last thing I noticed, because none of the other Eric Carr albums with Kiss had it. Eric Carr had a lead vocal.
Yeah.
Finally, I thought, great, this guy has a song that he wrote and he's also singing it, and a great performance too. And let's be honest, just in the nick of time, because unfortunately 2 years later he was not of this world anymore. So it was great to have him put a lead vocal to a Kiss song, and not just a Kiss song, but a song that he wrote.
Mhm.
So those are the standouts in terms of you know my impression of Hot in the Shade back then when I first heard it, and also today. I mean, I've heard the album many times. I've listened to all Kiss albums many times. um so what I just said still holds true. What about you? What was your first impression when because this was the album that brought you back into loving Kiss, right?
Exactly, exactly. I had checked out in the 80s, and I said this before. I heard Hide Your Heart and loved the song. And when I heard that song, I decided to go see Kiss again. They were just coming to Montreal.
Mhm.
And then I got this album and heard it in its entirety. And I don't know, people say that, this album was like, it sounded like a bunch of demos, unfinished demos. It was
Mhm.
lazy. I don't know, man. To me, this album sounded like classic Kiss, like it was recorded in the 70s. And
Hmm.
I may say something controversial here, but you know, this was the album that got me back into Kiss because to me, when I heard this album, it sounded so much like the Kiss I remembered in the 70s. I
Yeah.
wonder if I would have gotten back into Kiss if I heard, I don't know, Crazy Nights, Asylum, even Animalize.
Hmm.
I'm not so sure. I thought, I see why I'm out, But this album it brought me back. And then when I saw it in concert, oh my God, the nostalgia factor here. They brought back songs that they
Hmm.
played in the 70s. And the music on this album, we'll talk about that later. I really, really enjoyed it. And afterwards, when I started to rediscover Kiss and going back into their catalog, I really enjoyed their 80s stuff, but I only enjoyed Paul's stuff. And I'm going to
Hmm.
be honest, I remember thinking to myself, this stuff is actually better than the 70s stuff. I liked it better at the time. Now, I'm sorry, you can't compare, you know?
Hmm.
But I hated Gene's contributions in the 80s. And to me, a good Kiss album is an album where both Paul and Gene are strong. And like you said,
Yep.
Gene didn't make a total comeback musically on this album, but he made a comeback. He had some really good gems I found on this record, enough to bring me back. And you know what? Thank God this album brought me back because I know it sounds cliche, but it changed my life.
Yep. Yep. Same with me. I mean, I mean, obviously, I don't have the same origin story as you do, but yes, I mean, this album I think played a pivotal role in bringing Kiss back to the audiences that they lost. And then with the next album with Revenge, and we all know what people think of Revenge.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question here. Where does Hot in the Shade fit in terms of your Kiss discography? Where top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf? How do you classify this album?
We sort of talked about this with Dynasty when we did an episode on Dynasty
Yeah, I remember.
a few
Yep.
months ago. First, okay, if you were to ask me that question in '89, this would have been on the top
Mm,
because I was using this album to, in a sense, rediscover the band.
mm,
Now, okay, let me just put it this way. Um, Not including the live albums, not including the solo albums, you cannot
mm,
compare this album to the original six. Forget it. But I liked it better than Unmasked. I liked it better than Elder.
mm.
I liked it better than Carnival of Souls. Sorry. I liked it better than Crazy Nights. Better than
Mm.
Asylum. Sorry, boys. Better than Animalize. And better than Monster. So I guess that would be like the middle.
Some, somewhere in the middle. Okay.
Yeah.
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 All right. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Okay. How about
Okay.
you?
I mean, for myself, I mean, I'm going to maybe sound a little contradictory here because I said a lot of good, positive things with the first question. But now my answer to this question is, I mean, if I take, like yourself, if I just take the studio albums, leave out the live albums, if I just take the studio albums and leave out the solo albums, this would have to fit, honestly, kind of on the margin between middle and lower tier. I mean, look, most of Kiss's there's not one Kiss album I don't like.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm an optimist, or I try and be an optimist as much as possible. So I try and look for the good in everything. So for me, there's no bad Kiss album. They're all good, but that doesn't mean I love them equally. Okay, and like you said, the first six are easily, top tier. For me, even something like Carnival of Souls, on a good day, I would consider top
Mm.
tier. This album is it kind of hovers between, it's on the border between middle and bottom. Let me tell you something that would put this solidly in the middle tier, and that is what I consider to be Gene's worst song on the album, Boomerang.
Oh
I
God.
I hate this song. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Every time I listen to this album, sorry, I'm diverging here. Every every time I've listened to this album, I think to myself, okay, maybe this time I'm going to like Boomerang. Maybe this time I'm going to understand it. No, I'm sorry. I've listened to this album easily double digit times. I still don't get it. That song brings Gene's, average down, unfortunately, and that kind of keeps it, where it is in my hierarchy, I suppose. Kind of, you know on the border middle tier and bottom tier. So it shares space along with Asylum and Animalize and Crazy Nights and perhaps the perhaps the Elder as well, but like I said, I think, all the albums are good, but you can't everything can't be the debut album. Everything can't be
Yeah.
Dressed to Kill. Everything can't be Destroyer. I mean, Bob Dylan has a zillion albums. Not every one of them is a masterpiece, but then he has other ones which are definitely masterpieces, So it's the same with any artist or band that sticks around long enough. You just can't be perfect. It's impossible. You're human and humans aren't perfect. So this album, as much as I feel it did bring Kiss back musically, as much as I think it brought their audience back to a certain degree by, especially during the live performances, reincorporating the older songs and, acknowledging that these songs are part of their history. As much as I feel that this album did all that, if I look at the entire discography of Kiss, all the studio albums, it doesn't really get higher than that level for me. So
Okay.
that's just the reality. Maybe if Boomerang wasn't on there, it would,
Right.
like I said, it would solidly be a middle tier album. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
So, Michael, what song or songs do you believe held up over time?
Okay, I can answer this question two ways. I can answer them personally, like what I feel, and I can answer also from the band's point of view because they're kind of divergent in a way. For myself personally, I think the singles still hold up. Rise to It, Hide Your Heart, Forever. I think they hold up quite well. They are classic Kiss songs, and as well, Little Caesar. Part of me just wants to include that in there, I guess, maybe because it's Eric's only lead vocal contribution, but it is a really good song. So for me, those songs hold up the best personally. Now, when I look at it from a band point of view, I went back and I did some digging just to make sure I wouldn't get this wrong. But the only song that lasted after the Hot in the Shade tour was Forever. They played it during the Revenge tour. And then after that, even that disappeared. They didn't even play Forever during the '95 convention tour,
Mhm.
the Unplugged tour. So, kind of, that kind of gives an indication of what the band probably thinks, has this material held up well, because, right, Hide Your Heart never came back into the set list. Rise to It never came back into the set list. None of the songs came back into the set list except, Forever lasted one more tour. And, then that was it. So, you know, but for me personally, the singles definitely hold up, and Little Caesar definitely holds up. What about yourself?
I don't know. It's hard to say personally which songs would hold up because I think I'd be biased. If I was an outsider, that might be different, but it's hard to say. So what I can
Mhm.
do is tell you some of my favorite songs on this album.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know my friends Rob and the Carusos. They have a podcast called Right Between the Eyes. And on the show, they had a segment called The Nine. So they take a Kiss album and choose the best nine songs. So I didn't have that in mind when I was choosing my favorite songs off of Hot in the Shade. But then after I chose the songs, guess what? I had nine songs because
There
the
you go.
idea behind that podcast, they're saying, well, a lot of the Kiss's early stuff has what, nine, 10 songs, and they're good songs, no fillers. So
Hmm.
just like you said, you would take out Boomerang. There's other songs I would take out as well. I agree with many Kiss fans, and they said there's way too many songs in this album. It was way too long. It could have been more concise. So
Hmm.
here are my favorite songs. I'm not so sure how many of them would actually hold up over time, but here are my favorites. I love Rise to It. My
Hmm.
second all-time favorite song after Detroit Rock City, love Hide Your Heart. And Kiss fans are going to kill me because this is one song that most Kiss fans can't stand. Read My Body. I
I think
like that song.
it's a
Yeah,
decent song. Yes.
I
Yes.
like that song. I remember hearing it for the first time back in '89, and I enjoyed it. I
Hmm.
liked it. Come on, Forever, amazing song. I
Hmm.
loved Silver Spoon, Cadillac Dreams, King of Hearts. What an awesome song. Love Me to Hate You,
Hmm.
fantastic song. by Gene. I loved his contribution to the album, as well as Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 15 songs is, well, I mean, it's a lot of songs for a Kiss album. I mean, there's no
Yeah,
other album that has that many songs on it.
yeah.
Uh, you know, but yeah, that happens sometimes. And it could be a question of, okay, we want to give you more bang for your buck. We can include all these songs on a CD. CDs were still a relatively new technology at
Yeah.
that time. So suddenly you can have 74 minutes of music. Well, okay, then let's put more songs on the album. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every one of those songs is going to be a winner. The album probably would have, if you took the 10 best songs and released that, then I think maybe this album would be held maybe in higher regard.
Mhm.
Some of the, trim some of the fat off of there, like
Ex-
Boomerang. Um, so let me ask the last question here, and I don't know why I'm asking this, because you'll buy anything with Kiss on it. If I wrote Kiss on my arm here, you'd want me to cut my arm off and give it to you. But the new merch that they released as for the anniversary of Hot in the Shade, 35 years, did you buy any of it?
Yeah, of course. But to be honest, I only bought the colored vinyl. And I was
Okay.
online like right away at 9 o'clock. I could have gotten the picture disc. I just can't get myself to spend $175 US. It would have cost like
Mm,
215, $220 before shipping, and then
yeah.
paying duty on top of that. I'm sorry, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
And this could be a separate episode in itself, but I can't stand that they're selling their records in bundles. I'm forced to buy a t-shirt
Mm,
or a hoodie. And in this
yeah.
case, the album could have cost what, $35, $40? Then I have to pay for a $7 hoodie, which I don't even like, which I find was ugly. I like the t-shirt that came with the color with the picture disc, but
Yes.
that hoodie, and then all the t-shirts and stuff, it's it's
Mm,
it's becoming the same for all of the releases. And there's
right.
nothing, I find there's nothing special about it. Here's another colored vinyl for the 35th anniversary. Here's another picture disc. They'll sell it in 9 minutes, and people are going to sell it for triple the price on eBay.
Mm,
I'm sorry, man. Bring back the soundboard. That was super special. Let's get some box sets, not the vinyl ones. It was way too expensive. Some box sets. Those were things that we were looking forward to. Those are the things where we went,
yeah.
wow, incredible. These releases, oh, cool, another release. Of course, I'm going to buy it. I'm an idiot, of course. But I'm not very excited about it. I'm not very excited
Yeah.
about it. Did you
You
buy
mentioned the
anything?
off the sound. Well, I'll answer that in a second. But I mean, you mentioned something interesting here that got me thinking for once in my life. But wouldn't it be interesting that, let's say, for the next anniversary, whatever it may be,
I know where you're going
that
with this.
as part of the anniversary releases, as part of the merchandise, here's an off the soundboard from that tour. So imagine this hits anniversary, 35 years since the Hot in the Shade tour. As one of the items to sell, you get a complete soundboard recording of a show from the hits tour. I would drool all over the place. I mean, that would be the thing I would buy. So to answer to answer your question, no, I didn't buy anything. The only thing I would buy, well, obviously the hypothetical situation I just said,
Yeah.
but um, when Kiss did their remastering project of their albums, it ended with Crazy Nights. I would love to see a remaster, or better even yet, a remix of Hot in the Shade and a
Mhm.
re-release, either on vinyl or CD or both. I'd buy that in a heartbeat. I would buy that. Make the album sound better or louder or brighter or something. Because yes, it is demos that they brought into the studio, and they decided to use those demos instead of re-recording, because that probably would have cost them more, and they added some overdubs such as horns and stuff to one song, and gospel backing singers on another song, etc. So they added those touches in the studio from the demos that they brought in. That's fine. Everyone makes albums differently. It's no problem. They made this album that way. But the way this album sounds, this is my original version CD
Mhm.
that I bought back in 1993. And I still have it because they haven't put out anything that is better sounding, or better packaging or anything. So I'm fine with it. But if the merchandise drop for the 35th anniversary had included a remaster, or better yet, a remix of this album, yeah, I'd be telling you, yeah, I bought that and I can't wait for it to show up. You know, and if if somebody in Kiss World is watching this episode, yeah, how about a soundboard recording from the hits tour of a show, you know, have that be part of the celebration. So just an idea, but it would be a nice way to bring back Off the Soundboard.
That is freaking genius. Instead of bundling t-shirts and hoodies, bundle it with a soundboard. I would pay big bucks for that. I would buy the black vinyl soundboard and the colored vinyl along with the colored vinyl original album. Absolutely. I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
I'd go crazy.
I mean, next year we're 2025, so that's what, 50 years of Dress to Kill.
Yeah.
Imagine an Off the Soundboard from 1975 from that tour, or 85 is also the anniversary of Asylum. I've said on previous episodes that the Asylum tour is grossly underrepresented
Yeah.
officially.
Yeah.
Well, here's a great opportunity. um, but anyways, we're just talking here. But if it was me, I'd be like, wow, let's give the fans this. Let's give the fans music. Yes, things to wear are great and everything, or a beer cozy is fine and whatever. But at the end of the day, what brought us into Kiss originally, I think I can speak for both of us, is the music.
Absolutely.
And the performances. Everything else, to me personally, is icing on the cake. So anyways, that's it. But no, I didn't buy anything. If there, like I said, if there had been a remaster or a remix of the album, yeah, that I would have gotten. But based on what I saw, no.
Well, I'll say it again, Mike. I hope the higher ups are listening, because that is a good idea. That is a great idea. So, Mike, thanks again for coming on the show and stepping in for Claudio. It's been a lot of fun, and I think it's been really informative. So thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Kiss Army, what are your thoughts on Hot in the Shade? Any cool stories you want to share related to the album? Let me know. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk soon, Kiss Army.